step into the dark shadows of nursery rhymes as we unravel the scandalous real-life history behind Georgie Porgie. While many of us grew up believing it was merely an innocent childhood rhyme about kisses on the playground, the reality that lies beneath is far more disturbing. Prepare to delve into the sordid secrets concealed within this timeless rhyme. Welcome back, my fellow Darklings. Before delving into its origins, let's first revisit the most widely recognised version of this rhyme. Georgie Porgie, pudding and pie, kissed the girls and made them cry. When the boys came out to play, Georgie Porgie ran away. It is believed that Georgie Porgie may have been inspired by one of two historical figures, both associated with scandal. It's also conceivable that the rhyme refers to both individuals, blending their provocative stories together across time. The first candidate is the Duke of Buckingham, who you might recognise as a character from Alexandre Dumas' celebrated novel, The Three Musketeers, though he was indeed a real-life historical figure. Unlike his fictional counterpart, he didn't engage in an affair with the Queen of France. Nevertheless, his life was marked by a plethora of sexual escapades and scandals. In the August of 1614, a young man named George Villiers, just 21 years old, caught the eye of King James I. Villiers was described by the Bishop of Gloucester as the handsomest-bodied man in all of England, his limbs so well compacted, and his conversation so pleasing, and of so sweet a disposition. Villiers was the last in a succession of handsome young favourites who garnered the king's affection and patronage. King James bestowed upon Villiers the nickname Steenie, a reference to St. Stephen, renowned for having the face of an angel. In a heartfelt letter to Villiers dated 1623, the king closed with a tender salutation. God bless you, my sweet child and wife, and grant that ye may ever be a comfort to your dear father and husband. Villiers, reciprocating the king's deep affection, expressed his devotion in return. I naturally so love your person and adore all your other parts, which are more than ever one man had, and I desire only to live in the world for your sake, and I will live and die a lover of you. It appears that the bond between the king and George Villiers was deeply intimate, involving both an emotional connection and, very likely, sexual involvement. Until James's passing in 1625, Villiers remained not only the monarch's constant companion, but also his most trusted confidant and advisor. Beneath the king's favour, Villiers rose rapidly through the ranks of nobility, reaching the pinnacle in 1623, when the king granted him the esteemed title of Duke of Buckingham, a distinction unique at the time, as he was the only English duke not of royal blood. However, this swift rise to power came with its consequences. Utilising his newfound influence, he inserted himself into political matters and sought to elevate the status of his relatives, a move that not only alienated him from his peers at court, but also soured his reputation among the public. Villiers' romantic entanglements extended beyond his relationship with the king. He maintained a number of mistresses, some of whom were the wives of noblemen. His mother, Mary Villiers, was determined to elevate her family's status through a strategic marriage for her son. Setting her sights on Lady Catherine Manners, renowned as the wealthiest woman in the realm and the daughter of the 6th Earl of Rutland, Mary saw an opportunity to secure a substantial dowry for her son. Despite Lady Catherine's father adamantly opposing the union, Mary remained undeterred. Seizing an opportunity while the Earl of Rutland was away, Mary extended a seemingly innocent invitation to Catherine for dinner at her home. However, the evening took an unexpected turn when Catherine ended up staying overnight, finding herself in the company of George Villiers, the Duke of Buckingham, under the same roof. Mary later claimed that both Catherine and the Duke had fallen ill after dinner, preventing Catherine from returning home. Whether this was true or part of Mary's scheme remains uncertain. Nevertheless, with Catherine's reputation now ruined, her father had little choice but to consent to the marriage. Following the ascension of King James's son Charles to the throne in March 1625, Buckingham's leadership led to a string of blunders, one being the mismanagement of a vast naval and land expedition against the Spanish. Poor organisation, inadequate supplies and undisciplined troops led to the operation being aborted amid scenes of drunkenness, hunger and rampant disease, with the men returning home in disgrace. Public blame for this fiasco squarely fell on Buckingham's shoulders, prompting Parliament to initiate impeachment proceedings against him. In a bid to shield his favoured advisor, King Charles dissolved Parliament. Subsequently, Buckingham faced trial before the royal court, where, unsurprisingly, the charges were dismissed, sparing him from further repercussions. Amidst all these events, the Duke of Buckingham found himself despised by members of the aristocracy, the general population, and Parliament alike, yet adored by the reigning King of England, be it James or his son Charles. However, even royal favour could not protect him forever. On the 23rd of August 1628, the Duke met his end at the Greyhound Inn in Portsmouth. An eyewitness recounted that the Duke, upon being stabbed, turned and uttered the word "villain." He then attempted to confront his attacker, plucking the knife from his own wound and taking a few steps before collapsing against a nearby table and succumbing to his injuries. The assailant was identified as John Felton, an army officer who harboured resentment after being overlooked for promotion by Buckingham. The Duke's extreme unpopularity resulted in Felton being hailed as a hero by the public. Numerous poems and satirical verses were published, praising Felton's actions and condemning Buckingham. Many of these works depicted Buckingham as effeminate, cowardly and corrupt, and the rhyme Georgie Porgie might have been among them. The phrase pudding and pie in the rhyme could symbolise the Duke's indulgence in both male and female sexual companionship. During that era, pie was often used as slang for a woman's intimate anatomy. Kissed the girls and made them cry may allude to his numerous affairs and the resulting emotional turmoil inflicted. Meanwhile, When the Boys Came Out to Play portrays him as cowardly and lacking in masculinity. The issue with this theory is that the Georgie Porgie rhyme doesn't emerge in print until more than 200 years after Villiers' death. This doesn't entirely discount the Duke of Buckingham as a potential inspiration. Nursery rhymes often circulated via word of mouth long before widespread literacy and printing, and many early texts have vanished over time. Nevertheless, this lengthy gap allows ample opportunity for the rhyme to have evolved and altered. And indeed, the earliest surviving publication of the rhyme, dating back to 1841, describes it as an old ballad and replaces the mention of boys with "when the girls came out to play." As a result, some suggest that the rhyme might better align with our second contender. The Prince Regent, later known as George IV, was the eldest offspring of King George III and Queen Charlotte. Standing in stark contrast to his father's scandal-free, quiet demeanour, George embraced a lifestyle of indulgence, marked by excessive drinking, gluttonous feasting and numerous mistresses. Upon reaching the age of 21, he received a grant of £60,000 from Parliament, around £7 million today, and an annual income of £50,000 from his father. However, it was insufficient for his extravagant lifestyle, leading him into significant debt. Shortly thereafter, the prince became enamoured with Maria Fitzherbert, a commoner who was 6 years his senior, twice widowed, and a Roman Catholic. Despite legal obstacles such as the Act of Settlement, which prohibited the spouse of a Catholic from ascending to the throne, and the Royal Marriages Act, which mandated the king's consent for marriage, the prince remained resolute in his desire to wed her. In defiance of these barriers, the couple secretly exchanged vows in 1785 at Maria's residence. Nonetheless, Prince George's debts continued to soar, prompting his father to offer financial assistance, but only on the condition that he marry his cousin, Princess Caroline of Brunswick. In 1795, the prince reluctantly agreed. His prior marriage to Maria Fitzherbert was deemed null and void due to the absence of the king's consent. The marriage, however, proved disastrous. Caroline and George harboured a mutual disdain for each other. Following the birth of their only child, Princess Charlotte, just a year later, they opted to live separately, maintaining their estrangement indefinitely. George remained emotionally entwined with Maria Fitzherbert throughout his lifetime, despite occasional periods of discord. His extramarital affairs were numerous, resulting in several illegitimate children. Upon the death of his father in 1820, the Prince Regent, then 57 years old, ascended the throne as George IV. Despite having lived separately from his wife Caroline for 25 years, she chose to attend her husband's coronation and assert her rights as queen consort, yet George adamantly refused to acknowledge Caroline as queen. He wanted a divorce, but the king's advisers cautioned against potential public scandal arising from revelations of his own extramarital affairs. Consequently, he proposed the Pains and Penalties Bill, which would have allowed Parliament to dissolve the marriage and strip Caroline of her title without a formal trial. But the bill faced strong opposition from the public and was ultimately withdrawn from Parliament. Despite the bill's failure, George barred Caroline from his coronation at Westminster Abbey on the 19th of July 1821. Suspiciously, Caroline fell ill that day and passed away 2 weeks later. During her final illness, she repeatedly expressed suspicions of being poisoned. Thus, the line, "kissed the girls and made them cry," in the rhyme, finds ample inspiration in George IV's turbulent relationships, while the reference to pudding and pie could allude to his weight. George's lavish banquets and excessive alcohol consumption led to obesity, subjecting him to ridicule whenever he made public appearances. By 1797, his weight had ballooned to 17 stone 7 pounds, which is 111 kilograms, with a waistline of 50 inches, or 130 centimetres. George IV's unpopularity among the general public, fueled by his indulgent lifestyle, made him a target of ridicule. He was frequently mocked in satire, with the Georgie Porgie rhyme possibly among the lampoons directed at him. But what do you think? Is Georgie Porgie the Duke of Buckingham, or George IV? Or perhaps you've got your own interpretation? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if your thirst for nursery rhyme origins still lingers, be sure to subscribe and explore the rest of my channel. See you in a future video.